Welcome to the new Cyber Frontier, bringing you the latest news on the local Colorado economy and initiatives that focus on the development of cybersecurity economics. You don't have to be a computer or cybersecurity expert to get plugged in. Your host, Chris Gorog, brings it straightforward, asks the tough questions, and brings the cyber world to a level of understanding for everyone. Chris is personable and opens up with our guests on the issues we all would like to see addressed. You can find us on the web at www.newcyberfrontier.com. Now join our host as he introduces the topic for today's New Cyber Frontier.
Welcome to today's episode of New Cyber Frontier. On today, we have Carl Wright, who is the Chief Commercial Officer of AttackIQ. AttackIQ, we're not going to get into exactly what they do, or I won't, but I will let Carl just explain that. But some exciting things coming out from them, and definitely a good survey that he's going to talk about and give you some numbers, perspective, industry things, and stats from CIOs, which I am excited to hear from, and you will be too, I'm sure. Carl, welcome today. Thanks for joining.
Great. Well, thank you for having me.
Definitely. So, Carl, give us a little bit about your background, a little bit about what AttackIQ does, how you got to where you're at, and things like that.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So Carl Wright, as you introduced me, I appreciate that. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at AttackIQ, which means I mostly own the go-to-market activities for the company. But my background, I'm a 25-year security practitioner coming out of the DoD intelligence community, CISO for the Marine Corps, and done a lot of stuff from a cyber operations on that side of the fence before I converted over to the dark side, which is sales and doing startup companies. So spent the last 15, 17 years doing security startups. Got to see kind of this market evolve from the vendor side and how we can help or not help in some cases the practitioners that are trying to defend their cyber capabilities from bad guys out there.
Interesting. So AttackIQ, what space do you claim to play in?
Yeah, so some of the analysts will call this the breach and attack simulation space. Mm-hmm. We think that we certainly participate in that category. It's nice that the analysts have kind of created that for us and we didn't have to do anything to do that. And the BAS space, as it's called, is a super important new element to security programs that allow organizations in a very automated, rapid fashion to validate whether or not their people, processes, and probably most importantly, security controls are effective. We like to call the space continuous security validation. BAS tends to focus on attacker behavior, like MITRE ATT&CK, which is very topical today. But if you take a look at some of the largest breaches over the last 2 to 3 years, they had nothing to do with adversarial TTPs out of APT29, and everything to do with a misconfigured S3 bucket or a VPC on Amazon or some cloud plumbing or something like that. And those are just security controls or controls that are misconfigured. So we think it's equally as important to assess whether or not the controls you have in place are properly configured, as well as obviously doing the BAS thing, which is validating whether you can detect and block unknown adversary behavior.
So breach testing, I don't remember exactly what you called it, but it's almost like a new industry I haven't really heard of. How does companies in this space, what's their business model? How do they make B2B, the customer charges? What's your model?
Yeah, good question. So, it's enterprise software model. So we sell a solution that customers can deploy and run themselves from a SaaS cloud or on-prem. But we also have large managed security service providers that provide it as a service. What's interesting and why this particular sector is so hot right now is, as over the last 10 years, organizations have been spending more on security every year than they ever have. And depending on the analysts that you talk to, next year should be somewhere around $121 billion in security spend. This is a staggering amount of money for such poor results. If we take a look at other, industry reports like the Verizon DBIR report that comes out every year, Data Breach Investigative Report, 80%, breaches are going up year after year, even though we're spending more money. And, the definition of insanity is kind of continue to do the same thing. And so the other interesting thing about that report is around 80% of the breaches that were reported on, organizations had bought security controls and deployed them, but they were misconfigured, and therefore the adversary went around them, and that's not a good return on investment, right? And so I think the fundamental challenge, what BAS is here to hopefully do, is provide the necessary feedback loop that is completely missing anywhere in security today from an instrumentation perspective on whether or not these controls are properly configured,
All right,
and whether
so
or not organizations from a people and process perspective are monitoring these controls so that they can be more proactive.
Let's take a break real quick. We're going to come back to that, and I liked what you said about whether or not controls are properly configured. We'll be right back here from our sponsors.
Cyber Resilience Institute helps build strong cyber communities designed to prevent members from attack. Like building a neighborhood watch, it takes coordination and a sharing community to protect our identities and valuables in the virtual world. Typically, we hear that organizations know they need to do something to protect their cyber assets, but don't know where to begin. Let Cyber Resilience Institute help your community create an action plan. Cyber Resilience Institute will build your community or business marketplace so that it is designed to support a collective cyber defense. Contact them for more information at cyberresilienceinstitute.org.
Welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. On today, talking to Carl Wright, the Chief Commercial Officer for AttackIQ. And before the break, we were talking about the fundamental challenge from your perspective and what you see. And it's an interesting one because it's not the common one where, hey, we sell a tool, we offer this service. Everybody's saying we sell a tool, we fix your problem, we fix this problem, we fix that problem. You're looking at it from all those together and what's the effectiveness of it. So, and that fundamental challenge is that companies are dumping cash into it more and more every year. And we all know what the reports and the outcomes are right now, more and more breaches. And there's no way to kind of quantify what they paid makes anything better or any numbers at all. So you said, right before the break, you said that controls, they bought software and a lot of times they weren't configured right. So they weren't even using what they had, but they don't know this. So the interesting thing is what is the steps here? How do you recommend your customers or fix those things? How's that happen?
Well, let's double click on that real quick. So first and foremost, we released 2 different Ponyman reports on this topic, and just so we could quantify what the challenges are and not where we thought the challenges were, but where the CIOs thought, where the CISOs thought, Director of SOC Operations. And we had a massive return on this survey, 518 responses, of organizations that spent over $18 million a year on security, and 53% of them basically had no idea whether or not the security tools that are working, that they deployed are working. They had no idea. They had no way to measure this. In most organizations today, they do this with red teaming, blue teaming, purple teaming, pen tests, things of this ilk, right?
So question, any of them, was there any indication of whether they thought it had got worse?
Well, they think it's getting worse, and that has to do everything with the shortage of skilled.
I mean, because of the new things they bought, I did this and it's got worse.
I don't think that's in the report. I think what they feel is new vulnerabilities come out and they buy new solutions to solve those those attack paths because the current systems that are in the stack don't do it. And so you get tool proliferation. In most organizations, enterprise level, have over 75 different security tools that they're owning and operating. And they're really trying to figure out right now, and that's the benefit of MITRE ATT&CK, by the way, is taking all known adversary behavior, running it through your stack, and be able to assess whether or not your tools can block or detect these attacker behaviors. And then obviously the hope is you can do tool rationalization, right? That if you have 7 tools that detect the same thing and they basically are deployed in the same manner, why do I have 7 for the same thing? I can maybe get rid of some of this complexity and do some tool rationalization. Right?
So on that case, a lot of the tools that people buy, they don't even know how they're classified. They might not even know that 7 tools are doing the same thing because there's no global kind of uniformity way of classifying what does my tool do
Yeah.
on your network.
That's right. And this is the benefit of MITRE ATT&CK. And this is a huge wave in our industry today. And it's probably one of the most important things that has happened in the last 10 years. And I think will be that way going forward. And we're the first company to operationalize the MITRE ATT&CK framework from a testing perspective in our platform, codified it for Mac, Windows, Linux, and have the ability to click done, launch the adversarial kill chains into the organization to provide that feedback. That's important. So whether it's us or it's another vendor in the market, it doesn't really matter. What does matter is providing situational awareness, visibility in real time of the stuff that you bought. Is it configured to properly block or detect all adversary behavior?
So
that's it.
You had mentioned, and just for people that might not be familiar with it, the MITRE ATT&CK. Explain what that is.
Yeah, so absolutely. So MITRE is a non-for-profit organization whose mission is to make the world a safer place. And one component of that is cyber. MITRE, as everyone knows, invented almost 20 years ago, the CVE, which is classification of vulnerabilities for operating systems. And organizations use that on a daily basis with various product vendors in market to see if their operating systems are patched or not patched. And obviously, if they're not patched, that's bad. An adversary can take advantage of that, so go patch it. So every security program in the world, by compliance requirement, has a vulnerability management program. On the other side of that coin, MITRE has created in the last 5 years something called MITRE ATT&CK, which is a lexicon that codifies all known attacker behavior. And it's broken down into kill chains, so it's easy to consume. And it allows an organization to answer a very simple question. I bought all this stuff. Can it detect or block all known adversary behavior? This creates a small data problem, not a big data problem. And you can operationalize this into workflows so that organizations finally have a feedback loop on whether or not their products are working or whether or not their configurations are working.
Okay.
And let's face it, most of the products are pretty good in that people deploy. Where they have slip ups is product A is harder to configure than product B. And thus, human error introduces misconfigurations.
Gotcha. So, quick question: the MITRE ATT&CK. If once again, people that are not familiar with it, that maybe bought somebody else's product, that they come in and said this does exactly what this MITRE ATT&CK does. How do I know this is not just another one of those 1,000 apps that somebody sold me?
Yeah, that's a good question. So look, the MITRE ATT&CK framework is a huge database of data on adversarial techniques, tactics, and procedures. And so most security professionals can take a look at a technique from APT 29 as an example, a TTP, and be able to assess whether or not the product A or product B or product C is actually implementing that technique properly. Now, we're an open system testing platform, and what that means is people can download our Python classes. We use Python to execute these TTPs, these attacks, and they can look at everything that's happening there. So they can see that, yeah, look at that. Yep, I can see that this is APT 29 TTP X, and that you're properly simulating or emulating that capability. So it's super important, that in security all the way around, that the kimono is open and that people have visibility into how vendors are actually executing different things, whether it's our product or detection logic for detecting something, right?
Okay, and I can see that in you, that this is kind of what you're saying. This is one of the open kimono things. It's not all hidden. It's one of everybody can look at what's going on and make your decision for yourself.
Well, the other thing that's important is while we tend to focus on security controls that are pretty standard and everybody, knows firewalls and DLP and blah, blah, blah. Keep in mind that most organizations, there's a large bank we know that has 930 security controls. Only 300 of those are store-bought. The rest are proprietary controls they built in the bank or compensating controls that they put in place. And the challenge then for any vendor is if you don't know about a control or a compensating control, how do you write a test for it? You can't. And so it's super important to have an open testing platform where people can build their own content for it and write their own tests. And that's obviously what we do.
Okay, so definitely this is interesting. The statistics in the report you had talked about, though, we definitely want to hear some more about that, and maybe we'll discuss some of those points that you're seeing in the market, because people love to hear about statistics and how the marketplace in general, or their competition, or their peers are working in tandem together, or tracking separately. Am I seeing what everybody else is seeing? But we're going to hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back to talk about some more of the statistics we pulled together after we come back.
Murray Security Services are your cybersecurity experts with decades of experience providing professional training services for our clients in various industries. We offer professional training and certification in areas of cybersecurity, safety, health, and environmental services at our academy. Our in-person and online training provides a collaborative environment where students can interact directly with instructors through live chats or in private classrooms. Visit murraysecurityservices.com for more information.
Welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. On today with Carl Wright, the Chief Commercialization Officer at AttackIQ. And before the break, we were talking about the statistics and the 518 CIOs that responded to your survey. And some of those statistics that you told me were pretty interesting in themselves. I think we talked about 53% had no effective statistics, but you had some more that were very interesting. Give us a couple more of those that you thought were things that our listeners would benefit from hearing.
Yeah, I mean, some of these I think the listeners aren't going to find them surprising. Intuitively it'll make sense. I think now that they're written down, though, it means we have to address them. So one of them that I pulled out of the report was 69% of respondents, their organization's security approach is reactive and incident-driven versus being proactive. And you look at the sensitivity of this question and a couple of the other questions that surround it. The primary reason is shortage of staff and training of staff. Right, 68% said that was their biggest problem. Quickly followed up by 65% who felt the complexity and the lack of interoperability and the integration between security technologies was just too complex. Mm-hmm. And, so I don't have enough people. They're not trained where I need them to be. They're probably expensive. And my environment I'm operating is so complex. They're spending all day long basically focused on like keeping the plumbing going, right? Versus being able to turn that resources to proactive approaches.
So and I hear this repeatedly, there's 1,000 softwares out there. I think we said it once earlier. And none of them work together. A couple companies have bought up a handful of them, but even the ones they put together sometimes don't work very well together, or you'd only want one of them or two of them out of the 10 that they offer in the package, and the others are just riders, but you have to pay extra for the whole package because of it. How does this problem of complexity or non-existent interoperability start to alleviate?
Well, I think you have to have a strategy, right? And you have to have a strategy at the executive level, and you have to have a strategy at the tactical level. And the good news is, in both levels, whether you're SecOps and in the trenches on a daily basis, or you're programmatically responsible as a CISO, the best and most important tool you have isn't your security control, it's data, and being able to use data. And the CIO figured this out decades ago. They were instrumenting bandwidth and application performance because bandwidth was super expensive. And so they wanted to provide, quality of services, certain applications. And so you look at the CIO stack, it's very instrumented, and they can make lots of decisions. The security world has zero instrumentation. And that's the first fundamental problem is we know what best practices are, and we can all agree that you got to have a firewall, you got to have this, you got to have that. We have compliance remits that we have to do. So we have to go do that. But then we do it and we have no feedback loop to the effectiveness of that, other than using very expensive people, red team, blue team, purple teams, to test these things in a very spotty way to do it. So the first part of this journey,
Before you go on,
yeah.
explain what you mean by feedback loop. I think that, maybe even some examples of what that would exist of. Is it an AI program? What is that?
Well, I think the first part is just around configuration management, configuration control. Management plan change specific to how you manage your security things. Security is so fluid; threats are evolving so quick. There's not really a good change management process for like dealing with all these disparate products. And so if you're in an environment where you can't have strong configuration management, configuration control because you're responding to threats, then you need to be able to assess your what I call cyber readiness. The second part of that is your cyber hygiene. Two very different concepts. Cyber hygiene is like, look, you need to manage PowerShell in your organization so that an adversary can't take advantage of it. How do you manage PowerShell? You do it with group policy objects with AD. Who manages that? It's your desktop team, not your security team. So how effective is your cyber hygiene in managing PowerShell with group policy objects by your desktop team? You need to measure that, because if you don't, and an adversary, gets in, APT 28 gets in or 29 gets in, they're going to leverage that to move laterally. And so therefore you will not be able to detect adversaries move laterally. That's example one. Number two is, what is your cyber readiness? You bought this stack of stuff to ensure that your organization can make money, save lives, prosecute war, whatever it is. What is the ability of the adversary to take that away? What is your readiness to defeat or detect an attack in a timely manner, such that you can still make money, save lives, and prosecute war? It's a simple concept. But to do that, you have to introduce a level of automation. And so what we talk about is this automation continuum, and where organizations are on introducing automation. CIO shop does it all day long. Security shop is just starting to do it with products like Demisto, Phantom, Swimlane, other orchestrations out there. But an orchestration engine can't orchestrate if it doesn't have data. It needs telemetry and instrumentation. And so that's what I think the next journey is for most of these organizations, is to basically create signal to noise using like a BAS vendor as an example, but there's other ways to do it, in order to provide data and feedback to the SOAR to create the ability to measure and monitor and make decisions.
Okay, fair enough. I think I was looking for, when I say feedback loop, I was thinking there was going to be here's a simple definition, but it's almost like another checklist.
It is. And it doesn't matter what business you're in. We're talking about cyber today, but people have to have a decision support system, right? And that decision support system organizes data so they can make decisions. What we're talking about is risk exposure and risk quantification. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately for most CISOs and CIOs today, they're like the office of no, not the office of yes, mm-hmm. right? And the reason why is because they can't quantify risk. And if a business unit wants to field a new mobile banking application that can make the bank lots of money and create customer delight, they can only do that if they don't introduce certain new risk into the organization. Mm-hmm. And if you can't quantify risk, it's very difficult to release that application. And so I think we have to change the paradigm for security officers and for CIOs to one that is, we're the office of yes, because we have feedback, we have data to know what level of risk the organization is taking. And because we know our level of risk, we can decide if we want to assume more risk. And that's mm-hmm. a game changer. Security becomes an enabler for the business, not the disabler it is today.
So do you have, or do you know of that checklist of here's the feedback things we should be looking for and trying to implement? Do you know a good list of that you could point everybody to, or is it something that's just
yeah, no. So look, I think the good news is there's many people on this journey already, and it starts with MITRE ATT&CK, not to be repetitive. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, we have all known attacker behaviors. You can either detect them and block them, or you can't. So if today you're sitting on this podcast and you don't know the answer to that question, that's the beginning of your data journey, your feedback loop journey. I bought all this stuff. Can I detect or block all known adversary behaviors? That's the only reason you bought that gear in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. Once you can do that, then and you have that telemetry, that instrumentation, now it opens up your world to make all other kinds of decisions based on having good data. So I would encourage everyone, if you already know about MITRE ATT&CK, you're on this journey, and many people already are. But if you're not, just go to the MITRE ATT&CK website, and it's ATTACK. Is how they spell it. I'm sorry, ATT at sign CK. Go to the MITRE ATT&CK website, and it's a great wiki that will give you lots of data and ways to get started in thinking about this journey.
Interesting. Okay, so we started going through statistics. I think we got down a path there. Was there any others that were just interesting that people might want to hear?
Yeah, I think two other ones I'll just throw out very rapidly. 40% of respondents do not quantify or track the company's IT security posture today. They don't do anything. They don't do red teaming, blue teaming, purple teaming, pen testing. So back on to
that's at the 18 million or more. If
yes.
you go down to the smaller people, that number probably grows exponentially.
Well, that is an interesting statement there, because we're talking about the haves, the people that have budget, have money, have capability, that are dealing with nation state and crime syndicate. We have a whole swath of America and the world that are have-nots, but that still rely on technology to make lives, save money, prosecute war, whatever it is, right? And the Russians, crime syndicates, are equally aggressive against the hospital down the street as they are against a Fortune 500, right?
Yeah.
And so this is it's pretty disturbing from a critical infrastructure perspective, and from kind of the have-nots in the world on how they can deal with this. We didn't used to have nation state against civilian problems, right?
Yeah, I remember when I was in grade school, and they had the Dr. Seuss thing with the stars on their belly, or the ones that didn't, and then the haves and have-nots, and eventually trading back and forth, who has it, who doesn't. It almost seems like that's where we're at in the cybersecurity industry. With every time a new product comes down the road, you get a star or get your star removed, and it's a big figure eight of trying to keep up.
Well, and the unfortunate truth about that, you're spot on, is that this is a supply chain issue. I have lots of friends still in DoD, and DoD, obviously spends a lot of money. Their mission is, that is their mission, right? Their mission is cyber. And so they've done a really phenomenal job, in my opinion, over the last 5 years in shoring up the department. But what the adversary did, they stopped attacking DoD directly, and they go to the military industrial complex. They start attacking the large system integrators who have transitive trust into the DoD. And so DoD put a lot of rules and regulations on the military industrial complex. And so they spent a lot of money, and they got better. Well, guess what? They subcontract to a lot of smaller companies. And so now the adversaries are going after the small subcontractors on bigger contracts serving the DoD. And you know what? They can't afford to implement the same thing the large system integrator did. They don't have the dollars to defend against the nation state. So it doesn't, the trickle down effect here is a real problem. But the good news is that, I want to go back and say it again, with some of the tools today, organizations can very rapidly assess their cyber readiness without spending a lot of money. And if they can, do that cyber readiness report, then they can figure out where they get the biggest bang. They don't got to go buy, everything. Buy the things that give you the biggest bang to prevent the most common attacks that are out there.
Well said there. So kind of reaching the end of the time here, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to, put out anything you need from our listener base. Who are your customers? How can they get a hold of you? Who might need you? Those type of things.
Great. Well, thank you for that. It's AttackIQ, so attackiq.com. We have a lot of different information on our solution, which of course is focused on MITRE ATT&CK framework. Our type of customers are certainly enterprise customers, but we have a lot of mid-market customers as well. Our technology is very, very simple to deploy. It's click done, and you get results and be able to kind of understand and have insight into your security posture in ways that most organizations haven't before. We service all verticals. Everybody's got the cyber problem. So whether you're financial or healthcare or government or insurance, or it just doesn't matter, you probably have some sort of regulatory remit. If you do, this is a great way to get started in having some level of security testing automation in your organization.
It sounds like just visibility as to what overall is going on in your organization is where you guys' expertise is.
Yeah, situational awareness and visibility in order for you to understand whether or not your security program is effective. But it's not just about security controls. It's also about executing your security processes and people.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining today, Carl. Definitely, it's been a pleasure.
Great. I really appreciate you hosting this. Thank you very much.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of New Cyber Frontier. Remember, please follow and participate as New Cyber Frontier is supporting a grassroots community effort to empower the individual in the digital age. Check it out at privacyforthepeople.org. Also, make sure to join our mailing list so we can keep you informed. If you have an idea, if you have a question you would like to hear answered, or if you just want to get involved in what we're doing, reach out to us at newcyberfrontier.com. We also encourage you to visit our sponsors links because they are the ones that really make this show possible. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of New Cyber Frontier.